Welcome to this series we're calling Sustainability Bytes, where we're giving you bite-sized bits of information on how to meet sustainability standards. Today we're going to be looking at a tool called Stakeholder Mapping. Now, if you haven't seen the previous bite on stakeholder engagement, I'd encourage you to go back and have a look at that, and then the whole stakeholder mapping thing will make more sense. Stakeholder mapping is a tool where you analyse your stakeholders' attitudes, both positive and negative. And from that, you can work out how properly to engage with them. Although it's called stakeholder mapping, it's not necessarily generating a map. It's more about interviewing people and getting their opinions and attitudes and understanding their perspectives. In the past, I've been called in when the companies are experiencing problems with stakeholders who won't talk to them, or there's a specific incident going on, in order to act as a third-party proxy to gain information to work out what the attitudes of the stakeholders are so that they could move the issues forward. However, in this video, I'm going to encourage you to do this as a business as usual thing, to help you set up properly your stakeholder engagement strategies by interviewing stakeholders and mapping the different attitudes that you're going to have to deal with going forwards. The aim of the game is to anticipate situations and deal with them before they happen. Let me outline the value of this with a few scenarios. Consider the case of a forestry company who knows that within their forest management units they've got rare, threatened and endangered species, and they've consulted with experts and authorities on how to manage these. However, if they'd done a stakeholder map in advance, they would have found other stakeholders like animal welfare NGOs, animal welfare activists, and most importantly, volunteer wildlife carers who should be consulted and probably weren't. These people may not seem important, but they're the sort of people who will go to the media if something goes wrong. So it's important to understand and involve them earlier so that you can take into account their views and attitudes. Consider an area that has been zoned for chicken farming and has maybe a dozen chicken farms in it. Now, chicken farms have several issues, one of which is smell, and the other is every 7 weeks when they clear the chickens out of the sheds, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of light and there's a lot of activity, and it happens at night time. It would be wrong to consider that because the area has been zoned for chicken farming, everybody understands what chicken farming is all about and has no complaints. A stakeholder mapping exercise would probably identify the fact that because the area is zoned for farming, the lifestyle blocks tend to be cheaper. So people are attracted to buy lifestyle blocks in this area. And they certainly do not understand or do not appreciate the finer points of chicken farming and may likely be complainants in the future. So it would be important to identify those people, talk to them, tell them what it's all about, and maybe take into account their needs by talking about dipping lights, using less reversing beepers, trying to do noise prevention, that sort of thing. Now, there's an important link between stakeholder mapping and another tool that we're going to be talking about in later Sustainability Bytes, the social impact assessment. The social impact assessment involves looking closely at demographics and especially the changes to demographics. And that sort of thing will help you identify the sort of maps of stakeholders that you're going to be having to deal with. To illustrate this, consider a traditional farming region where people have been farming there for years and are quite tolerant of things like dust or truck movements during harvest. But a quick look at the demographics over several censuses may show you that there has been an increase of younger people moving into the areas, again lifestylers, and the demographics will show that those people are coming from outside the farming regions, and those people are definitely not tolerant for things like dust and truck movements, so you need to talk to them. It's also important when you're doing stakeholder mapping to identify attitudes of stakeholders, which will help you understand who you and your company should be consulting with them. So for example, if it's a senior manager or a lawyer, that talks about power imbalance, and often you won't get the sort of cooperation that you would get otherwise. Let me take you back again to the example of the wildlife carers. These people are volunteers, and very often they're women, and a senior male manager talking to them from a company often has both a power imbalance and a gender imbalance. So in those situations, you might look at somebody lower down the company talking to them, and possibly a female. Conversely, you might find that an organisation, let's call them a small NGO, would be patronised by a lower member of your management talking to them, and therefore it might be appropriate to have a senior manager talk to them to illustrate that they're actually being taken seriously at a very high level. So it's a case-by-case basis, and that's what stakeholder mapping and the interviewing around stakeholder mapping will identify. So I hope I've convinced you of the power of the stakeholder mapping tool. Now here at Pinnacle Quality, we've been involved in stakeholder mapping and have used it in several occasions where there's been intractable disputes, and we've been able to work through with the companies and help them get back on track. But we're also able to help you set up the stakeholder mapping as a business as usual exercise and help you to develop your stakeholder engagement strategy with a much more focused on the attitudes of the stakeholders that you found in the mapping exercise. Please contact us if you need any more information. The contact details are here. And most importantly, if you like this video, please press like. Can you share it also so other people can get some ideas about what stakeholder mapping is all about? And again, we welcome your comments. Thank you. We'll see you at the next Sustainability Byte.